County Board of Education business meeting of May 18, 2021. We're coming out of executive session, although we didn't finish it, and we will continue it at the end of the agenda. So we're now back in public session. And do we have any action as necessary or appropriate coming out of executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have two items. The first, I move that the Board of Education approve amendment number 2 with MBCon Construction for Battery Creek High School renovation work for a guaranteed maximum price of $49,528,741.
Okay, Mr. Mel Campbell, second. Yeah. Any discussion? The question is called.
So.
Middleton, yes.
Mr. Smith, how are you voting?
The motion carries 9-1-1. I cannot see who the no and abstention are.
Dr. Wineski abstained and Mr. Smith voted no.
Okay, so the motion carries 9 yes, 1 no. Mr. Smith
Was a no.
and the 1 abstention, Dr. Wisniewski. Do we have any further action as appropriate or necessary coming out of executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I was not here when you apparently when you went to questioning, but I just wanted to put on the record why my vote was no, because the information was unclear to why we were piecing it together and not doing it whole. So that's why my vote was no. For the record, thank you.
Goodman, please go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education approve amendment number 6 with HG Reynolds Construction for the turf field and track resurfacing at Hilton Head Island High School, which authorizes an amount of $1,560,885.
Second. Second was Ingrid Boatright. Mr. Strivenger. Do you have any further comments? Your hand was up, but maybe.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right. So there being no further hands up, we'll call for the question.
Yes.
Mine still says I can change my vote on the last one.
Which way do you want to vote
It's not
now?
coming up. I think something's stuck. It didn't move on.
Okay, which way would you like to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, how are you voting? Can someone ask Mr. Smith how he's voting? Oh, he came through, never mind.
Can you please scroll up? The motion carries 9-0-2. The 2 abstentions are
Rachel and William Smith.
Dr. Wisniewski and Mr. William Smith. Does that conclude the action coming out of executive session, Mr. Scrivener?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. We now need a motion to approve the agenda with removal of the Low Country Education Consortium virtual programming under board business because it is not ready to come to the board tonight.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting, May 18th, 2021. Yes.
The Low Country Education Consortium
Low Country Education Consortium.
virtual programming under board business. I second. Okay, Ms. Robine, second. The question is called.
Yes.
Yes, Robert. Mr. Melvin Campbell,
That's good.
The motion to approve the agenda with removal of the Low Country Education Consortium under board business is approved unanimously. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have a moment of silence. Please be seated. The media has been properly notified. Our performance tonight is Miss Kyler's third grade class at Joseph Shanklin Elementary School performing Shake My Maracas under the direction of the music teacher, Mrs. Karen Jordan. Here to tell us about the video is Shanklin Elementary's principal, Elizabeth Rivera.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and viewers. Tonight, I am very honored and excited to share a video with you of Miss Kyler's third grade class performing Shake My Maracas under the direction of and accompanied on the piano by our fabulous music teacher, Mrs. Karen Jordan. The students worked very hard rehearsing and filming until they had it just right for you this evening. Personally, my favorite take was when one of the maracas went flying through the air, but we're going to save that one for America's Funniest Home Videos. This is the one that the students decided that they wanted to share with you this evening. Enjoy.
We are Miss Kyler's third grade class from Joseph Shanklin Elementary School. We will perform Shake My Maracas by Sally Albert and Jay House.
Oh, come and hear me shake my maracas. Oh, come and hear me shake my maracas. I shake them to the left, I shake them to the right, I shake them overhead, I shake them down the side. Oh, come and hear me shake my maracas. Oh, come and hear me shake my maracas. I hope you shake some too. So come and hear me shake my maracas. Oh, come and hear me shake my maracas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera, and how can anybody not be in a good mood after hearing Shake My Maracas? So, I want to share with you today in points of celebration our April Students of the Month. And so our character education program was formed to support parents' efforts to develop good character in their children. And tonight, we're celebrating the character education students for the month of April. April's character trait was forgiveness, and forgiveness is defined as to stop feeling anger towards someone who has done something wrong, or to stop blaming someone. April's student of the month for North of the Broad is Caleb Rodriguez, 6th grade student at Robert Smalls International Academy. Caleb's teachers shared that very few people have the ability to extend mercy to those who have caused us harm. At its core, it is plain goodness that radiates from forgiveness. Caleb Rodriguez is a child that has been able to overcome confrontation with peers. Despite what was said to him, Caleb did not hold on to the actions that could have caused grudges. Instead, he's continuously open and friendly with his peers. Caleb made the conscious and deliberate decision to forgive others. Instead of focusing on the negative, he chooses to see the good in people. He places the needs of others above his own, and he empathizes when others are hurting. Caleb's humbleness and courage allow him to respond with kindness in every situation. Caleb Rodriguez. For South of the Broad, the April Student of the Month is Claire George, a 2nd grader at Hilton Head Island School for the Creative Arts. Claire's teacher, Mrs. Hawker, shared that Claire's sweet spirit lights up every room that she walks into. Mrs. Hawker says that even when Claire is going through tough times, she manages to shine brightly and wear a smile. Claire has overcome a great deal, and as she faces challenges, she wears forgiveness daily. Our classroom is a better place because of Claire. She models the golden rule and encourages others to do the same. She goes out of her way to show kindness to others, even when they may be feeling or doing the opposite. She seeks opportunities to love other people, and she is sensitive to what others may be experiencing. I'm so proud of the strong person that Claire is becoming, and I'm a better person for having known her. Congratulations, Claire.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. We're down to the first public comments, and my understanding is we do not have any. So we're now on to the chairman's report, and I have 2 items to report on. The first is the Board of Education legislative proposals agenda. At our last meeting, Lynn Stokes Murray, our lobbyist, gave us a legislative update, and we discussed possible legislative proposals the board would like to submit for the 2022 legislative session. Eliminating the salary cap on teachers employed 24 years or more was brought forth by Earl Campbell, and multiple other board members voiced their support. No other legislative proposals have been submitted to the board officers to date as requested at the last meeting. Ms. Stokes Murray reached out to me after the last meeting and made 2 suggestions. First was to submit our legislative proposals to the SCSBA, that's the South Carolina School Boards Association, and to the General Assembly this year. Last year, we just did the South Carolina School Boards Association. Her second suggestion was, in the interest of expediency and efficiency, she would like to work with her colleague, Shannon Bruning, Katie Millage, who is South Carolina Department of Education Staff Legislative Liaison, and 1 or 2 board members to craft the legislative proposals, which will then be brought to the board at the June 1 meeting for approval by vote. I was going to recommend Earl Campbell, our legislative liaison, and Kathy Robine, who has written our legislative priorities letters previously, be the representatives for this task. If we do not have unanimous consent from the board for this plan, please make a motion now. All right. I'll now report on the joint meeting with County Council. On May 13, representatives from the Beaufort County Board of Education and County Council met for an informational discussion. A video of the meeting is posted on the county channel. The topics covered were fiscal autonomy for the school district's budget and tax rate, the fiscal year 2021-2022 school district budget, impact fees, the Lobico Branch Library Head Start property, and the security fee for Hilton Head Police Services. Most of the discussion centered on fiscal autonomy and the budget. The county council members present were in support of our proposed budget and not opposed to fiscal autonomy for the district within the limits of state law. Tonight, the board will be voting on the budget. On April 20, the board directed the superintendent, on April 20, the board directed, quote, the superintendent to work with legal counsel to draft a proposed ordinance regarding fiscal autonomy, unquote. At our joint meeting with county council, another avenue suggested was pursuing fiscal autonomy through the Beaufort County legislative delegation. The delegation would approve and introduce legislation for adoption by the 2022 General Assembly, which may be the better long-term solution. The legislation would grant authority to the Beaufort County Board of Trustees to adopt the district's annual operating budget and to establish the property tax millage rate for school district operations within the limits of state law. In order to gain support of the delegation, board members need to contact the delegates. I have already contacted my representative on the delegation, and we had an excellent conversation. I would encourage other board members to do the same. The Board of Education members are all elected, and the board is solely responsible for the educational results of the school budget. So we should have the legislative authority to set the budget and tax rate. That concludes my report. Ms. Robine?
Is my hand up?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the committee reports. Our first report is the Ad Hoc Results Committee. Ms. Robine?
It was up just because I knew that it was coming. I really have nothing to report at this time. We continue to work. We have another meeting coming up. Yeah.
I think your microphone just went off.
I'm just gonna.
Okay.
The next meeting of the Ad Hoc Results Committee is June 2nd at 11 a.m. I have nothing to report at this time. We're still working.
Thank you. Next is the Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Geyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The primary point of business today is to approve the quarterly report, third quarter financial statements. Therefore, I move that the board approve the current financial status of the district's operations and ongoing referendum and 8% capital projections for the third quarter for the period ending March 31, 2021.
Second.
Okay, the motion was made by Mr. Geyer and second by Ms. Boatright. Discussion?
The Finance Committee looked at the quarterly reports. Revenues and expenditures are well within the target limits, and the 8% and debt servicing is well within targeted limits, and we found no objection to the report.
Mr. Smith?
So y'all had this at the last finance meeting. Y'all had this report, and y'all have a unanimous vote to send this to the full board. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
I just have a comment, Dick, and I see that on February 17th, we switched from PEs to OEs. And this still has PEs on it, so shouldn't it be updated to have OEs? Okay, Ms. Crosby's going to address that. Thank you.
Good evening, good evening. We are still in conversation and in preparation of the the superintendent's interpretations of the operational expectations. So I believe the final versions of those are being worked on through the end of June. And as soon as those are prepared and brought forward to the board and accepted, and then we will be bringing forward the official OEs going forward from after that point. So at this point, we're still in limbo. We're still sort of in between the two policy types, the old peak performance expectations and the new operational expectations. So as soon as those are finalized, we will bring them forward and then begin to use the new monitoring reports.
Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add a point of clarification. Mr. Smith asked if it was unanimous. I believe this was at the May 13th Joint Finance Operations Committee meeting, and I was not in attendance as a Finance Committee member. I was in DC for a funeral, so I did not vote on this.
It was unanimous of the two members that were there.
So no one else really has an issue with it. It's not OE. It's the report that matters. There being no further hands up, we will open the vote. Call for the question. The motion carries 10-0-1. I'm the one abstention, and I've already made my point of why I'm abstaining. All right, we are now down to the Operations Committee, as reported by Chair Ms. Fidrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Operations Committee has met several times to discuss the 8% projects. I believe everybody has received their voluminous binder that shares in great detail the various 8% projects that we had to winnow down. So this evening, after having gone line by line and up to version 5, I'd like to bring forward the forward motion. So I move that the Beaufort County Board of Education approve the fiscal year 2023 8% capital projects list as presented in the amount of $21,265,980. Funding shall come from the following sources: $20 million from 8% capital bonds, $493,106 in fiscal year 2016 and fiscal year 2017 completed 8% funds, and $772,874 of ESSER 2 funds for Whale Branch Elementary and Whale Branch Middle School mold remediation projects. Additionally, E-rate reimbursements in the amount of $1,600,000 will be used to supplement the fiscal year 2023 network electronic projects.
Second. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that second, Ms. Boatright. So just to fill in some more of the gaps here to the whole board, I just want to reiterate the numbers of times that the projects you see on this final version had been reviewed. They were reviewed over and again, and with the new process of reporting for the 8% capital projects, We also had some visual edification of these projects, which really was a fabulous detail to be able to see that which is being recommended for 8% projects. So we are very proud of the fact that the committee unanimously, of those present, it was 2-0, agreed to bring this version forward to the full board.
Mr. William Smith?
I do have some concerns with this, with the way how we bought this before the board this afternoon today. Mr. Scrivener, during the meeting, he brought up some great points, and I was not at the first meeting, so he kind of answered my question in the last meeting when I was trying to figure out how we got this the process that we have now versus the process that we've had in past practices, and which that is of the we voted on the actual funding of each projects, not just the projects and where the project can go from A to Z, and we're not really exactly how we're not sure how much money the project is going to actually cost versus we knew exactly how much the project was going to cost and where it would max out at. And we knew where the overflow of money would go. If there were any money left over, it would go towards the next 8% projects. And that's not what took place. And so, it throws off a little bit of transparency to the public. So at this time, the way how we currently have it, because of that, I can't support this motion. I mean, maybe Mr. Scrivener can talk to that a little as well, because after I thought about it, it's a great concern. Thank you.
Mr. Scrivener?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm going to vote for this. My point in bringing that up was to make sure that that everyone understood that there was a subtle difference that didn't jump out between this year and last year's 8%. I'm not opposed to it, but I wanted to make sure we were all aware of that difference and it just didn't slide by. And then in a couple of years, we say, oh, geez, I didn't realize we were doing that. It is a difference, as Mr. Smith pointed out, where we used to approve a set number of projects, and any money left over would be rolled forward to the next bonding cycle and the bonding amount reduced. And this one, we're voting for a set amount. And if there's money left over from those projects above the black line, then they start getting applied to those projects below the black line. So there is just kind of a subtle difference. I just want to make sure everybody noticed that.
Oh, we need the, thank you, the motion display. Dr.
Wisniewski, you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I thought my hand was up. I just had a quick question, perhaps for Tricia or for Robert, in regard to how this approved list was meshed or married against anything that would qualify to use for ESSER or American Rescue Plan funds. Because it's my understanding that some things relative to HVAC and roofing and stuff like that. I just wanted to make sure that I asked that.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. So as far as ESSER 2 funds, let's start there. That money has already been spent and dedicated. There is a refund that we are getting that we're noting in here, of course, and Ms. Fidrich had in her motion for the mold remediation that we had done at the 2 well branch schools. As far as ESSER 3 funds, there is a funding available for HVAC. We are starting to work on that. We have not dedicated any projects or funding for that purpose at this time, but could include roofs, furniture, and also HVAC. And of course, we're as a senior staff working on that. And I have we don't know the exact amount or how we're going to distribute that funding at this time. But I have a long list of projects that once we do get to amount, I am sure that I can find projects that have need for that funding. So it's undefined at this time. We don't know exactly how much of that money will be spent towards facilities.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last tail end of that.
Well, I just asked if Tanya wanted to add anything to that, and she said no. That pretty much described where we are.
Okay. So from the ESSER 2 funds, then the $772,000 for Whale Branch Elementary and Middle, are those the only ESSER 2 funds that have been allocated to any types of facilities repairs?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And this might be a question for Tanya. Do we know about that American Rescue Plan, how much that was again?
Yes. I want to add on the ESSER 2 funds that we received approval of that application this week. And so we do have approval, which includes the $772,000 of mold remediation for Whale Branch Elementary and Middle School. As far as ESSER 3 funds, the American Rescue Act Plan Act funds, we are receiving $50.9 million. We just received that allocation, I believe, last week or the week before. And so we've already allocated or submitted documentation for requests to our senior staff members. We've asked them to compile listings of their requested items and submit that back to me and to the Special Revenue Office. And then we have a meeting planned to discuss the prioritization of those funds as well. So we're in the very beginning stages. The actual application or plan is due to the State Department in August of 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
And just to go to my second point, Dr. Wineski touched on a little bit, but also I also do have a concern that we're moving forward. And I was told early, at the end of last week, that Washington D.C. was sending more money down for building. So that will be that money can be allocated towards like projects like 8%. So I'm concerned that we're moving forward with the 8% projects, and the government will be pushing down money for the exactly things as tedious as these right here, as these projects. So I'm a little concerned that we might want to wait, and that we're using this money or borrowing money to do this when we should not be, if the government is going to provide some money for us to do this. So that's another concern that I have moving forward. Thank you.
Ms. Dietrich?
Thank you. There was a lot of conversation in committee about how do we use funds other than 8% to take care of this really extensive list of items that need to be done. And as many of you have been around to our schools this past week, honoring our teachers of the year and our staff of the year, we have seen that the needs in the schools is very great. And this is really the tip of the iceberg for these 8% projects. I feel very confident that with Ms. Crosby's assistance, we did identify alternative sources of funds that are going to enable us to keep working down this list of 8% projects. Ms. Crosby, if you would, it's my understanding we have no guarantee of reimbursement of that $50.9 million at this time. So if we were to spend money right now and counting on getting that reimbursement, it has to go through an application process, right?
That's correct.
So we did not want to identify projects that would solely be kept in that $50.9 million category in the anticipation Just why would we inure ourselves into that if, so we present this project list to you. We feel it's been extremely well vetted. We think the identification of alternative sources of funding is appropriate. And so I, again, am proud of the committee's work. And again, this final version that we're presenting this evening via the motion was unanimous of those present at the Operations Committee.
Ms. Romine?
Yes, I attended several of the Operations Committee meetings, and I do want to thank you for the detail that your committee spent going through line by line. Excellent questions were asked. I just thought it was a great exercise in looking to make sure we were spending the money where it really needed to be spent, and I thank you.
All right, there being no further hands up, the question is called.
Yes.
The motion carries 10-0-1. The one abstention is
Mr. Smith.
Mr. William Smith. Ms. Continue.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, it's supposed to be no. I didn't hear the abstention. I thought I hit no.
Okay. I'll go back and
Your
check.
vote will be corrected. Ms.
Thank
Stipends, please proceed.
Thank you. The next item on the Operations Committee agenda is to have the construction update. Is Mr. Corbett online with us?
Hello.
Oh, that's right.
Unfortunately, Mr. Corbin is under the weather at this time, so I'll be taking this spot. So I'll do my best. I'm gonna highlight this. What I would say is that we have 24 schools right now with projects going on. Of those 24 schools, we have 3 yellow lights. So I'm gonna go through those yellow lights and hit on those. If there's anything else you're interested in, feel free, and when I get through the yellow lights, we'll come back and address any of the questions you might have. So on page 8, Robin, is the first one. That's Hilton Head Island School for Creative Arts. This one we discussed, I think, at the last meeting, having to do with the technology infrastructure, where IB and School for the Creative, or Hilton Head Elementary and School for the Creative Arts are connected, and there was concern with getting both of those schools completed this summer. So we are focusing on the elementary school, which is the hub, and we are not doing School for the Creative Arts at this time. So that is the reason for the yellow light. We are postponing that until next summer. At Bluffton Elementary, which is the next page, page 9, in the Bluffton Early Childhood Center, that is also a yellow light for that same reason. The hub on that campus is at H.E. McCracken. In other words, the network comes up through H.E. McCracken, and then from H.E. McCracken, it goes to Bluffton Elementary. We're going to, again, focus on H.E. McCracken to get that done this summer, and we will have to address Bluffton Elementary at a later summer, hopefully maybe throughout the year, but most likely next summer. If you go to page 14, you have a yellow light at Bluffton High School. Now, this is an 8% project having to do with painting. This was to paint the entire building of Bluffton High School. That means classrooms and corridors. It was just a large-scale project. We had a plan in place to begin, actually now, starting to work nights and weekends. But the price was escalated due to all the overtime that we were looking at doing to condense it into that schedule. And we were concerned about just getting it done on the timeline. We are only going to do half of that this summer. We're going to do all the classrooms and then come back next summer and do the corridors. And we're expecting to get a better price in doing it that way and not have such a schedule constraint on getting that project done. A high school is just a massive project. Trying to get it done in 6 weeks is a lot. So We're going to focus on completing some of our others and divide that project in half. If you would go to 19, this isn't a yellow light, but I'd just like to show, we have some pictures there of the Beaufort High School weight room construction that started, just to recognize that that project is underway and moving forward. If you'll go on to page, so that was all the yellow lights as far as projects go. So if there are any other questions on projects, I'll just stop for a second. Hearing none, I'm going to go on to.
Mr. George has one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Ryan, I apologize for interrupting. It's not a question as much as I really just wanted to share with the board about one of the construction projects that's going on. I had the great opportunity to be at Beaufort Elementary for their Teacher of the Year and Staff Member of the Year ceremony. And while I was there, the principal was over the top in her comments about the customer service that HD Reynolds was providing to Beaufort Elementary. And I also took a tour with Bobby Construction. He is one of the project managers or
Job superintendent,
thank you, for that area, and toured and to have 80 to 90 workers there during the school day. They did not disrupt the school day at all, and just the greatest of compliments from the school administration. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We love to hear when things are going well. So if you'll go to page 34, I'll just real quick talk on the closeout. We've actually, you see some yellow lights there on closing out some projects, and I know Colonel Geyer, this is one of his things, and I'm telling him we're working on it, but we have some that have fallen behind. But we're going to have, I hope within the next month, the majority of those yellow lights will be turned, will actually go off the page because we've closed them out. But we are behind on a few of our projects for closeout. But we have closed out one, which was a small project at Red Cedar. If you go on to page 37, this is the cash flow against our projections. And I would just like to note that in the month of April, which was the last month that we finished up, we met our projection dead on at 3.5 million. So for April, we were projected to be at 59.57, and we're at 55.82. So somewhere between 3 or 4 million under, but we are tracking nicely. And I'm seeing all the proposals and payouts coming through. I feel confident we're going to be catching up here pretty quickly. So the last thing, if I can point out, is page 39, just community outreach. And I'd just like to note that I think I reported to you last time about the meeting in April with the Robert Smalls Association. We have one that we're scheduling in June, and we're continuing to have some conversations with the alumni group, and I have to thank Mr. Earl Campbell. He gave us some connections there that we reached out to. And a lot of this has to do with gaining the history and pictures of Robert Smalls and making sure they're incorporated into the final product of the building itself. So very excited on how that's going to turn out. I'm looking at probably bringing the GMP for you, Robert Smalls, in June. So that's something to look forward to. And also note, I think we noted this last time as well, was the SIC meeting with Beaufort High. So with that, that completes my construction update report. And I'll take any questions that you have.
Your hand is still up. Thank you, Robert. No hands up. Continue on.
And lastly, I'd like to share with the board that we had a presentation from Ms. Walton and her team regarding the compensation study. This is for the board's information only, as there is no action required. This will be an internal HR project that they will do, funding through HR to go out for this compensation study. So in your board docs, everyone was able to see some of the goals and the objectives for the study. And Ms. Walton is available if anybody has any questions. I do want to point out, though, that we did ask Ms. Walton about teachers' salaries and whether this study would include the certified teachers. And this study does not include that because the teachers' salaries are legislature dependent. Whatever the state determines the salaries will be. However, if I could draw your attention to the last bullet on the back under the compensation plan, it does say that they would be looking into a salary calculation process for moving certified teachers from school level positions to district level positions. So they will be looking at that when for certified teachers to district level positions. The committee did say to Ms. Walton that we really are very interested, though, in a salary look-see for the certified teachers, and that is certainly something that they can do and present to the board at a later time. So Ms. Walton and her team is here if anyone has any questions about HR's compensation study.
Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question in regard to the things that were contemplated during the creation of the scope for this and the deliverables. Was there discussion had regarding other types of compensation or competitive benefit packages and things like that beyond just the, set salary schedule? Was there conversation about other types of benefits and things like that that could make us even more competitive against other districts that might not offer those incentives?
We, Dr. Wisniewski, we did not include that because typically compensation study deals specifically with salaries that we pay. We could get into other benefits that we would consider as perks, but that would be something the board would have to institute. And if that's something you want us to look at outside of the study, we can certainly do that.
Yes, ma'am. I think that would be beneficial for us to look at what other districts might be doing to incentivize people coming into their district as opposed to just the salaries, because I do know that benefits are attractive to a lot of people. And that's something that I think we do also need to look into. So I'm not sure about my other fellow board members, but I think that would definitely be something we should consider doing. Thank you.
Mr. Scrivener?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree completely with Dr. Wisniewski. These are types of jobs that have usually have fat benefit packages, and that's one of the incentives. And as we know, salary is just one component of retaining teachers. So at some point, we've got to get the whole thing put together. But just for compensation, those benefits add quite a bit to it. So kind of need to get that full picture. And I don't know what the next step is, but we really should take it so that we can project, the proper picture of the complete compensation package. I know in industry, we used to always do that. You'd have a percentage that you added to your base salary to understand what your total compensation package was, basically what your contract was with the company. So I think that's a real good idea. I think we should do it as quickly as we can, but I'm not sure what the step would be to do that.
Mr. Strivenger, we certainly can do that. I will bring to the board's attention that in terms of our benefit package, the district does take up a portion of employees' health care that we pay a part of. We pay an extra portion of health care. I'm looking for my word here. Health care cost from the district. We take, and I'm not sure, it might be, and Tanya, you might want to jump in on this. It might be 2% or 3% that we take on as a district that most districts don't take on. So we have some things already in place. I agree that we don't tout them enough, that we probably need to do that, but we will certainly be able to, or happy to look into other things that we might be able to add to make a complete package.
Ms. Boatright?
Mr. Schumacher beat me to it, but I was going to say, agree with Rachel and to say thank you for bringing that up because that is an important point. And we discussed in the committee the fact that, you know, when you clean out your closet, you want to get the whole thing straight, not just part of it. And so we wanted to look at teacher salaries and look at the whole spectrum of compensation. And really, we're in a competitive environment for attracting workers. And we're a desirable place to live, but so is Charleston and so is Savannah. And I think I may be wrong, I'm speaking for Dr. Wisniewski here, but I kind of got the impression you were talking about like maybe some out-of-the-box benefits, not just healthcare and retirement, but maybe, I know some places in healthcare where they have nursing shortages, they're paying for professional development, they're paying, you know, student loan forgiveness. There's a lot of creative thinking that people are doing to attract talent. So I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm appreciative of her bringing it up. I think maybe Ms. Fredericks can speak to this. You know, the operations committee would be the next step to start talking about what the next step would be. Ms. Fredericks?
Thank you, Dr. Watts. Exactly. So I was going to suggest to the board, I see this kind of as a process. We're starting with this compensation study. When those results come back, we've already expressed to Ms. Fulton that during an operations committee meeting, we will be discussing what is it going to look like for a teacher's study. Just comparing to Savannah, Charleston, and so on. And in committee, we also discussed the locality supplement. Is the locality supplement, that we agree on every year? Is that something that should just be rolled over? So I see it as a step-by-step process. We're going to start with the results of the compensation study. Parallel to that is going to be HR looking into presenting to us what other districts do, pulling in what are some of the benefits. Like Ms. Walton just mentioned, I know that teachers every year get a printout. Ms. Walton, if they still do, and it talks about those unseen benefits, and actually it gives a financial allotment to what those benefits would equal. So teachers see how much more than just what comes home to them in their paycheck. So with the board's consent, I would like the operations committee to kind of develop a plan, a process of how we're going to look at this in its entirety to include that which that Dr. Wisniewski just mentioned and so on.
Mr. Williams-Smith?
My concern is that I do hear what that this was brought to us just to give us an update, but I feel that if we can get more bang for our buck, then I understand what Ms. Fredericks was saying, that this is a process and a step by step, but I think if we can put it, we can package it all in one. I think that we will possibly even spend less. It's the same thing with the when it comes in terms of bringing proposals out of executive session to the full board in terms of buying of buying of material. I think we can get more bang for our buck. I think that then we should package this and do this at one time versus waiting and doing it step by step, and we can get all the answers that we need to be successful. Thank you. To make a long story short, thank you.
Mr. Melvin Campbell?
No, my concern is only with what our end goal is with this compensation review. Because if it's to retain quality teachers, then we also have to phase in the instructional leaders and their idea of how we can keep the teachers we're trying to keep. And I don't want to, back the situation for individuals who you may not want to hang on to after all, because they fit a certain time restraint and the constraints that HR builds around what is retention. I think, instructional leaders have to build what is good, what is good retention. So if retention is our thing, then there has to be a coordinated effort on how and who we're going to retain. So that's my before, we run too far in one direction. I'd like, to coordinate that with instructional leaders.
Mr. Earl Campbell?
Yeah, and also we need to figure out what it's going to cost. we can look at our district and see what they're doing. But, we have to make sure if we're gonna do this, we're gonna get the funds from. That's the thing that we need to think about also.
So I'd like to just make a few comments. To me, compensation study is a misnomer. To me, compensation includes your benefits, and I just looked up the definition of compensation while we've been talking. Compensation is the total cash and non-cash payments that you give to an employee in exchange for the work they do for your business. It's more than an employee's regular paid wages. It includes many other types of wages and benefits beyond base pay, which would be their hourly or salary wages. I do think that as part of this, we absolutely must define what each employee, and maybe it's standard for all the employees, they are receiving in benefits beyond their base pay. And that should include even, the district's contribution to their health care. If we have some kind of, a lot of healthcare actually has a small death benefit with it. It would include actually sick days, what we call, how many sick days they're allowed, or vacation days, how many days their contract is. That all adds up to really what their compensation is, and to me, that should definitely be considered. Just the straight base pay, salary or hourly wages, yes, is a portion of their compensation, but it needs to include what the, I guess, better term would be benefits include. So, I'm not sure. I just think that really has to be well defined when a study is done, what is included beyond their base pay.
So, Madam Chair, can I address that?
You certainly may, thank you.
Every year, employees receive their compensation package in terms of numbers. There's their base salary, their sick leave is added in there. Any benefits that we pay over and above their cost is added in there, and they get a total number for their compensation. If an employee earns $70,000 a year, there's going to be about 30% more added to that $70,000, which would include their benefits package, what we pay for sick leave, and anything we put in extra outside of their base pay. So I might get $70,000 in base, but once I add in those benefits, it's going to be $110,000. And every year we send out that information to each employee based on their base pay. So they do see that every year.
So I think that, thank you for your explanation. Yeah, if this industry standard, it seems like in most, for most employers, typically benefits add 25 to 30% to the employee's base pay. So I just think we need to have a good handle on what is that percentage for the district. For, I don't know if it varies by job duty or by years of employment, or how that varies.
That is correct. And Tanya, you can correct me if I have my numbers wrong here. But when we calculate hiring a staff member, we figure this base pay and we add about 33% more to that to include benefits. Am I right, Tanya?
Actually, it's more like 41% with health. That includes health insurance. Retirement alone is 21%. Social Security and Medicare is about 8%, and about another 10% is our health insurance benefits. So it's actually about an average across our employees about 41%.
Let me guess, I bet you that's pretty generous.
Very generous, very. So we will be happy to bring back what we already offer employees, along with some suggestions as what we could possibly add into that and the cost for that.
Or maybe it needs reconfiguration, you know? Yeah, I guess you're gonna find that out as we look at it.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walton. Mr. Earl Campbell.
We have discussed this in the past, And each time, questions say, the comment came, well, we don't want to be paying our employees, I'm not talking about the teachers on it, our employees more than what the county is paying theirs. And we get bogged down in that, and that's we should leave that alone. These employees work for us, they don't work for the county council. I hope you understand that.
Mr. Wilson?
Only thing I was going to add is that this would also entail, along with the other staff members as well, not just teachers, correct, Mrs. Walton?
That is correct. This compensation study really is geared for classified staff. That would include all your support staff and your administrators. If you will go to the last bullet in our goals, one of the things that we are recommending at the very beginning, Robin, just go to the top and the last bullet in the top. That is that we are recommending an increase in the starting salary and extended years of service for teachers. That's our recommendation, and we will bring that to the board along with the cost. But this compensation study will take administrators and classified staff, look at their current salary, look at their current job descriptions, and determine based on the market if they're where they need to be in terms of salary ranges. So it includes everyone in the district except for teachers. And if we add the recommendation for step increases from the beginning down to the 24 or wherever the district wants to land on that, then it does bring in teachers, but that's what the local board would have to do. It doesn't come from the state or the legislature.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. I just wanted to bring that to the attention. Because we were talking about teachers, but I know that when we talked about it in committee, we talked about other staff members as well as bus drivers and other positions as well. And I will say I do agree with Dr. Quash that when she talks about the equality is very important in this district, and making sure that we are giving our teachers the best thing, the best support, and we're putting them in the best financial position as possible to provide for them and their families. Thank you.
Dr. Wisniewski?
I was just going to add a suggestion that where it says offer fair and competitive compensation for all positions, that we add something in there about innovative compensation, because competitive compensation might just mean that everybody thinks that it's a higher salary than, the next guy in the district over. But like Ingrid mentioned about other types of compensation that we can be doing that makes us attractive, I think that we need to think outside the box on that and wrap that into what our goals are for what we offer our employees. Thank you.
All right, there are no further hands up, and I don't think we need action from this item. Next, we're down to Policy Committee. Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Policy Committee really only handled 2 items at our last meeting. The first being the directive of the board to look at the policy regarding electronic use of devices by board members in meetings. And there was a sample directive or a sample policy that was provided to us, and we really had a robust conversation about that. A lot of the members felt that it was difficult to enforce and put teeth into, and we also found that there was really one sentence that stood out to us that could be used in the handbook under our, I believe it's titled the governance commitment area in our handbook. And Robin has this pulled up to where we're adding that sentence. But the sentence reads, board members will not communicate electronically during meetings with members of the public, other board members, or district staff regarding official board business, agenda items, or other board matters that are properly discussed publicly during board meetings, as such communications may be subject to public disclosure under the Freedom of Information Act. So So we thought that it made most sense to house that here in the handbook under the governance commitment. And then we did have some discussion regarding meeting end times. Again, we didn't really have any type of recommendation to the board. There was conversation centering around the committee reports and making sure that those are structured on the agenda so that we don't have a huge amount of committee reports under one meeting. And if any of our other committee members have any other comments to add, I'd welcome them at this time. For any other board members, if they have any questions as well.
So this is our handbook, not our governance manual. So does this need board approval?
It's my understanding, and I believe the other, perhaps I don't want to speak for them, but the other members of the committee's understanding that it did not require board action or readings. The handbook is kind of a guiding post, if you will, of housing different other types of explanations for new board members and things like that.
Yeah, that would be my assessment as well. All right, Mr. Stringer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree. You know, the handbook does not need to go through the same rigor that the policies do, you know, of readings and approval. But it would be good to know that the entire board agrees with this addition to the handbook. So I would not be opposed at all to the board either asking if there are any objections to it or actually having a vote that we approve putting this in the handbook. It just gets everybody's buy-in. I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Yeah, I certainly would ask if anybody objects to this being included in the handbook. Please do speak up and let us know and we can talk about it.
Mr. William Smith? Mr. Smith?
I won't say that I object, but once again, I will ask, how will this be policed? Because if you're putting it there, you're putting it there for the reason of policing it. And how will it be policed? How will you police people's personal cell phones? And how can you say that they are what they're talking about is about the topic or what's going on in the board meeting? So once again, that's my question. I mean, I'm just want to play devil's advocate for a second. How will that be done?
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for that question. And that was a part of the conversation that we had in the policy committee and why we decided that the handbook was most appropriate. Because I think it was consensus in the committee that policing it would be extremely difficult and cumbersome if we even tried to attempt that. So putting it in the handbook really says that this doesn't necessarily have effect of policy per se, but more so this is appropriate behavior that we feel board members should conduct themselves under.
Right, because we definitely want to infringe on people's rights as well.
Agreed. And that is something too that was mentioned and that is covered in our policy manual, that nothing in the policy manual is meant to infringe on anybody's rights. So.
Ingrid Boatwright?
Thank you. We talked a little bit about this. How are we going to enforce this policy? I don't want to enforce the policy. I said this in the meeting, we are 11 educated adult people that have been selected by our communities to represent them. I expect everyone will adhere to the policies that we set out. So I'm not particularly interested. It's an odd test to me to see whether or not we can enforce it or police it. But I still think it's valuable to both the public and to ourselves to say, this is what we agree to. This is how we're going to conduct ourselves. So there's not someone this actually stops people from policing themselves. Because I had to text earlier because my son was landing at the airport and he couldn't, there was some stuff going on. I don't necessarily want people asking me why I'm on my phone, but I am committed to the fact that I will not discuss board business or things that should be done under in public disclosure, or things that are actionable under FOIA on my phone. That's my commitment as a fully functioning adult. And so I think that we still can have policies that we neither intend nor are able to enforce.
Mr. Campbell?
I don't think we need it at all. Something you can't enforce, why keep it? If you're a board member, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. And you know it's not good boardmanship to do those things that you should not do. You know, we don't need a policy or thinking to remind us, because we can't enforce it nowhere. So it's a waste of time. Thank you.
Mr. Hvac?
Yeah, that's why we didn't put it in the policy manual, we put it in the handbook. Because although we can't enforce it, I think we all agree that there are standards of behavior that as board members, we agree to abide by. And by putting it in the handbook, we're not saying we're going to enforce it, but we're saying this is a standard of behavior, something that we as adults believe in, and we're, you know, it's a public statement. It's a statement to those of us that are on the board. These are our beliefs. You know, we're not going to police each other, but this is a standard that we've set for us. Just like standards of behavior are set in every workplace, in every, you know, that's why workplaces have employee handbooks, because they outline standards of behavior, work expectations, that type of thing. So that's why we decided to put this in the handbook. It's important. It's a standard that we feel is, you know, a standard of behavior.
I was the one that actually brought this forward to have it go to the policy committee, and now I think it's placed very appropriately in the handbook. You know, I'm also not of the mindset, how do we police it? As professionals, we need a certain levels of professionalism, certain standards of behaviors, Kathy's just pointed out, and expectations. And this would be one of them, because if, for example, a board member is communicating with a member or two of the public throughout the meeting on their phone, that's not being impartial. That's not adhering to the way people are to interact with our board during meetings. That's public comments. And so that's, you know, it's just a level of professionalism, a level of standard of behavior. And exactly, I mean, businesses all have an employee handbook that have these things. I mean, for example, we don't have a policy on how we should dress, but nobody comes in here with their pajamas and bedroom slippers. I mean, you know, it's a given. We have a level of professionalism. And so we don't need everything in policy. And I think this is a great place to put it. So I appreciate it, and I thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was saying good night to the girls. Thank you, Madam Chair. If there is no further conversation, then that concludes my report.
So, Mr. Smith, your hand is up.
Yes, I was just going to say, I noticed in the policy in the previous we stuff that was duplicated in certain parts of the handbooks and the policies. I believe that we got rid of it because it was being duplicated. So that's just one of my concerns as well. And then the second thing is this. So what's the difference between you, a board member, looking at the board agenda and calling the superintendent or staff member or something and discussing it prior to the meeting and asking and getting more clarity or bringing up something that they read and versus talking to someone in the public about it? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what's the difference and them doing that versus now versus later or versus that time. I mean, it was still done. So I mean, some of the stuff. I mean, once again, I think that we want to be careful, you know, on how we infringe on people's rights, as well as we are all elected by the public, not by each other. So I mean, that's just you know, I mean, those are just like a couple things that you know, maybe I guess I see Dr. Wineski have her hand up. Maybe she can give me clarification on that.
Well, I would respond that you have to remember, and I'm saying this to the public at large, not just to you, Mr. Smith, but the board only has power and authority when we are in a called business meeting, i.e., when the gavel goes down at the beginning and to everything that happens until the end, when the gavel goes down for adjournment. That is when the board has power and authority. So if a board member outside of the business meeting is asking the superintendent, or the superintendent is, you know, involving one of his staff members to answer a question the board member may have, that's not part of the business meeting. That's totally outside, and that's very appropriate if things need an explanation or understanding. But you just have to, you know, the public has to remember that we are conducting business when between the opening gavel and the finishing gavel, and that's the only time the board has power and authority. Ms. Boatright.
I put my hand because that's what I was going to say, because this policy specifically addresses during a meeting.
All right. Could you please lower your hand, Mr. Smith? Thank you. We are now on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. And first item in the superintendent's report is under fiscal responsibility. We have 3 items there. It's monthly transparency report, then the monthly 100K report, and the board monthly budget. And so Ms. Crosby will walk us through these.
Good evening.
Hello.
You can hear me all right?
Not working.
No.
Turn it on.
All right, great.
Have your mouth very close to the microphone,
All right, we'll
please.
do.
Thank you.
So there are 3 reports in our monthly board business, board superintendent's report under fiscal responsibility, $100,000 report, the monthly board budget report, and the monthly transparency report. Actually, we have 2 versions, continue to have 2 versions of the $100,000 report, both a detail and a consolidated. And there are many details there for you. I'll be happy to take any questions in any particular areas. I do want to point out we did make 1 change on the board monthly budget report to add an additional column of percentage used. So we have a percentage of original budget used and a percentage of revised budget used as well per board request. And we'd be happy to take any comments or questions in any of these areas this evening.
I'll just say, I think it's really helpful on the board budget report that you've got those 2 columns now. What was the percentage of the original budget, and then the percent of the revised budget? That will also help in making up the budget every year too, which I know you have it in your head, as does Robin, but not everybody does. There don't seem to be any questions or comments.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I apologize. I couldn't get my hand up, but I did have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Under the board budget report, I see technology software. There was money spent on technology.
I believe that's the $9,160 you're referring to. I believe that is board docs. Is that correct?
Board docs is 14.
Yeah, board docs is more expensive.
I can't hear you.
So where?
My microphone has gone out, Robin, or Molly.
So can you tell me which line we're referring to?
It's 534500.
He's talking about here.
Right below 4B.
I couldn't hear.
My apologies, the microphone went out.
great.
It's in 534500, the second page under the board stipends. If you will give me just a moment, I can tell you what the details of that are. Brought my computer up here to the podium. That is board docs.
So that is a monthly fee to board docs?
That is it is a purchase as of March 26th, 2021. I see one transaction so far this year. And that amount is $12,840.
I think we also pay, I want to say in September, is that right, Molly? I mean, Robin, don't we pay board docs also in September? For some reason, I have an idea it's about 25,000. Because I think maybe it's split into two.
We have an annual fee, so it is split twice.
Do you remember off the top of your head?
I have to go back and look at the dollar amount.
I think that might be
I don't-
half the payment.
I only see one payment in the prior year of $12,000. The other part of the budget is for production services for Beaufort County's, the Beaufort County channel. So I don't see a history of more than one payment in that category, but I could do some further research and bring back information next time. So that's the only transaction I see for the last 3 years in that software category.
Thank you. Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're on the board monthly budget. Did we skip over the transparency report, or can I speak to that one?
Sure. Any of them are available for comment.
Perfect. Yeah, I just had a question on the last page. There was 2 fraudulent or disputed charges, and I just wanted to ask about that. It looks like one of them was an unauthorized from a vendor, and I see that's got an adjustment pending. And then the other one was, it looks like it came from maybe the maintenance department, and I just wanted you to speak to that, and also about perhaps how we catch those and prevent them in the future.
Okay. There are a variety of ways in which we catch them. Oftentimes, Bank of America, the credit card company, will catch them on our behalf and will notify us and dispute the transaction on themselves. The other way is we require our bookkeepers to, on a daily basis, monitor the spending on their cards activity on the Bank of America Works website. And if they have a transaction that they have not, cannot match with their transaction logs, then they should dispute the item and notify directly to the Works program through the software system that they are disputing that. And it puts a hold on that transaction until it can be investigated through the Bank of America Fraud Department. So there are a couple of different ways to do that. Then we also do a monthly audit from the district office. Our purchasing card administrator does a monthly audit as well and monitors the transactions to see if there's any abnormal activity. So it's a multitude of ways. I don't know the exact details of the maintenance adjustment here, but I can certainly get an update from the purchasing office, and we can get that information out to the full board via email.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Mr. Smith?
I was looking on the report, and I was noticing, I was going to ask, I see there's a tech purchase services and license. Board docs wouldn't go under that?
Yes, board docs is under the, on page 2, tech purchase services and licenses. The expenditure amount there is $12,840. That is board docs.
Okay, so my question is technology and software supplies. What is that?
Okay, so that is down in the 544500 category. There's $6,570 worth of spending. And give me a moment and I can look that up. Technically, those are generally iPads or laptop devices.
And we had 2 new board members
For board members, yes.
this year.
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear you. I apologize.
Those are technology devices for board members and or staff members. I believe there are 2 new board members this year, so they were likely to be 2 purchases for either iPad or laptop.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, there do not appear to be any other hands raised. Thank you, Ms. Crosby.
Thank you. In the last portion of the superintendent's report, under the COVID-19 update, this evening, before I share with you our current numbers of positive cases and quarantines, I would like to discuss the events of last week regarding mask requirements in schools. Governor's Executive Order 2021-23 preempts and supersedes any local ordinance, rule, regulation, or other restriction. The governor has determined that any remaining mandates issued by counties, municipalities, or other political subdivision of the state related to face coverings are no longer necessary or appropriate to address and mitigate the existing public health threats, and that circumstances are such that South Carolinians can make responsible choices and take appropriate precautions to protect themselves and their communities. The order goes on to say that the governor has determined and declares that any such ordinance, order, or other measure is invalid and preempted in accordance with this order. Furthermore, the State Board of Education policy that was in place requiring masks in public school facilities was lifted the day after the governor's executive order. His executive order allows parents to determine whether their children should wear a mask while in public school facilities. The governor went on to direct Hvac and South Carolina Department of Education to facilitate his executive order by developing a consent form for parents, guardians, legal custodians, foster care providers, or other representative authorized to provide consent for or on behalf of a student in a public school in the state of South Carolina to use regarding their decision of whether or not their child should wear a mask. We received that form the following day from Hvac, and our schools provided it to parents the following day. That is a Hvac form. That is not a school district form. But that is what was sent to us as a result of this executive order. We continue to require masks on school buses because that is a presidential order from the federal government and it remains in effect. In accordance, I sent out a robocall to parents and to employees informing them of the governor's executive order. In the current 2-week active window of positive cases, we have 21 students, 6 staff. Quarantine numbers, we have 193 students and 12 staff. And that concludes the report.
Thank you. Ingrid Boatright.
Quick comment, because I was talking to some parents, and when that came out, everyone said, oh, what's that gonna be in this governor's order? And they said that that evening, they got a robocall clarifying it, and they thought that was great. They were really impressed that we got right on that, and I just wanted to send that compliment on to the district staff, because the parents were, not all the parents, but a lot of the bulk of the parents, I think, were really happy with how fast we responded to it and gave them an option.
Thank you.
All right, we're now down to board business action. Ms. Crosby.
Rachel's hands up.
Dr. Watt, if you have a hand up.
Sorry, I had put my hand up. I took it down. I was just going to echo what Ingrid said. A lot of parents were just very happy that they had the option to opt out and that we responded as quickly as we did. I did have another comment, and I just wanted to say thank you to our teachers who were diligent in dealing with the mask issue when it came down. I know that was a shock to everybody, but the district responded quickly and responsibly, I think, and making sure that we implemented that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Just that evening, held a meeting with senior staff and then held a meeting with our principals in order to communicate and engage with them and let them know I would be providing a robocall to all employees and to our parents. And so I concur with what you said, that we do want to applaud and recognize our teachers and our administrators at our schools for the manner in which they responded, really kind of turnkey moment, right, immediately. So thank you to them. I concur with both of them.
Mr. William Smith?
I was just going to ditto and say exactly what Dr. Wisniewski say that we'd like to thank the all district staffs for still coming to work and sacrificing after making a self-sacrifice after that announcement was made. Definitely like to tell the staff stay encouraged and thanks for their continued support to our community. Thank you.
Ms. Crosby?
All right, good evening again. This evening's discussion is the fiscal year 21-22 proposed general fund budget and proposed debt service budget for the school district. This evening, it's a continuation of the discussions we've been having. We have had a series of 3 other discussions plus the joint committee with the county council to give them the first glance at our budget. We are at an important point this evening in the discussion, and that is the certification and approval of the budgets. I will not be going through every detail of this presentation this evening. You've seen many of the slides in the past, but I will touch on some highlights. Some very important points, and there are a few new items that I brought forward this morning, including the comprehensive budget, which is all funds, and some of the CARES, ESSER, and ARPA funds, spending and budgeting that we have planned so far. So one difference this year is our virtual public budget forum, and I am very excited about it this year. We actually took the lead, followed the lead, excuse me, of another school district in the state, in the nation. Actually, I searched around to see what others are doing throughout the state in terms, in lieu of the pandemic, and how they were communicating their budgets to the public, and found an amazing example in Des Moines, Iowa, of a virtual public forum, and they had done theirs many months ago. So I thought it was very interesting. I brought it forward for the communications group, Dr. Rodriguez, and we felt like it was just, in light of the current conditions, we're still emerging from pandemic, it felt like it was the best avenue to convey this budget to the community. And actually, although we were able to record it last week and place it on YouTube on Friday, and then we have posted it on social media and other district widespread emails since then. And we have had so far 90 views, and that far surpasses most of our budget town hall meetings that are in person. So it is able to reach more people, and we've already gotten questions from that and provided responses back to many of our teachers who are involved. And so it gives them an opportunity to go to the forums that may not necessarily be, close by to their homes or their schools, and it gives them a chance to watch it at any time of day or night that they may want. So I'm very excited about that, and throughout this presentation, I'll be updating you on a few of the questions that we've received from those viewers. So I want to start the presentation this evening with our just the basic notion that we have planned this budget with the board's expectations, their policies, and the administrative rules in mind. We're maintaining a fund balance within 15 to 17%. We're preparing a balanced budget. We're providing a multi-year perspective. We're providing, it reflects multi-year, anticipated employee compensation. It informs you of budget assumption as we move forward, and it shows amounts spent by category. Of course, these are, again, our challenges: learning loss due to COVID, achievement gap. Those items are at the forefront of this presentation. Our academic strategies to engage families, recruit and retain highly qualified staff, develop talent, expanding opportunities for students, recruiting and retention, and building the support at the district level are at the forefront of the academic strategies that we have set forth in this budget. So on slide 3, this demonstrates the academic strategies we use to develop this budget. And these items we have linked directly, the instructional items and support items we've linked with our strategic goals. They've allowed us to focus on our strategies and align them so that we're able to convey them to the community and to the board, and to be able to justify the potential increases in this budget. On slide 7, we're showing the proposed budget of $274.3 million. This is a total increase this year of $20 million. It's about an 8% increase. And we're showing increases in major categories. If we could go to slide 7, yeah, thank you. And so our major increases include state and federal mandates, which are about 39% of this budget, employee compensation and benefits that are outside of the state mandates are $4.2 million, operational increases of $3.4 million, student achievement, there are items specifically designated of $1.4 million, district support of $1.2, safety and security of $1 million, and items, positions to address that are addressed in the efficiency study of $843,000 for a proposed budget, again, of $274 million. So on the next slide is a summary of compensation increases. This is one of the greatest categories that was requested or questions were posed upon in our budget forum responses. And we did address those. One of the main questions was, is a locality supplement in this budget? And so the answer is yes. And it is not on the slide currently, but we have continued the practice of providing the $5,000 teacher salary supplement, the locality supplement for teachers, $5,000. And then for classifying administrators, it is $1,500. There was also in the request a response to consider in future years an increase in that supplement. So that was something that I wanted to convey to you, and it was certainly something that we will put on priority lists for any consideration, future consideration. So in this budget for teachers is a state mandated teacher step increase. A state mandated $1,000 increase to the base teacher salary. So every step will have an additional $1,000. And we would restore the step increase that was waived in 2012. So they are actually 2 step increases and $1,000 for teachers. It is an approximate 6% increase for those 3 areas. And we're also recommending to raise the max teacher step from 24 to 25 years. So this, along with $1,000 and that max step, those teachers that are 24 plus years would also receive a pay increase this year. So that is very favorable for us. For classified administrators, there would be a step increase and a 2% cost of living, approximately 4% increase in total for that group of employees. And the state legislature is discussing a mandated 5% increase for bus drivers. So that will be in continuing deliberations with the state and possible approval in mid-June. So in slide 9 is a summary of the revenues in the district. Overall, state revenue increases account for about $7.5 million that fund portion, just under half of the increases in this budget. Actually, and to demonstrate what we often have as a challenge is that the mandatory retroactive step increase that's occurring this year cost the district about $1.9 million. We funded it in this budget based on an estimated $1 million because we had no information at the time of what those revenues would be. On May 14th, which was on Friday, we received an estimate of what that would be, and we are being funded at $1,116,730. So it's about 59% of the estimated cost of that retroactive increase. So our estimates were slightly under that, so that's very good, but that's why I'm always being conservative on our state revenue estimates, because we certainly don't want to come in and be short on that. One of the reasons for that estimate is also that the state has a max teacher step increase of 23 years. So they only fund up to 23 years, and any increases provided beyond that or on the districts must be provided through local tax revenues or other sources. So there is no indication whether this funding will be recurring for the next year's budget. So I have budgeted again very conservatively to estimate that that would not be recurring funding because the state indicated early on in conversations that it was a non-recurring funding source. So that's a challenge we find often with our state revenues, and we're really unsure at this point, even though the need is to move forward and build this budget and get approval before June 30th and implement it as of July 1. We really are unsure of multiple sources, so we do our best to make those estimates on a conservative basis. Again, the primary state funding formula for schools is the Education Finance Act, also known as EFA. Beaufort receives the lowest percentage of state funding of any other school district in the state at 24% of the base student cost allocation. For each dollar allocated to through this formula, Beaufort receives about $600 per student. The formula is designed to require the local tax base to provide a greater amount of support for the Beaufort County School District, and as a result, we must seek additional revenues through local tax increases. So slide 10 illustrates the proposed millage increase. Another question through our forum was, what is the proposed tax millage this year? That amount is 121.6 mils. The increase proposed is 7.6 mils. We're currently at 114. So our 114 mils is virtually the same as the 2 prior years as seen on the next slide. So we've held at virtually the same rate as 2018 and had no tax increase for the last 2 years. So you'll see that we are looking to comply and maximize the millage cap through state law and Act 388 and implement the value that is available to the school district in order to support the needed increases in this budget. So the next slide is the impact on the taxpayer. Again, $250,000 non-owner occupied home at assessment ratio of 6%. Would be an annual cost of $114. And over 12 months, I think that's just under $10 a month. And so in the second scenario of a $400,000 home, a non-owner occupied, 6% ratio, that would be $182. And that would be approximately, I believe that is just over $15, I believe, per month. And so, and on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And this is the summary of the general fund budget, our revenues and expenditures and the changes from the prior year. And the fund balance is going to have no change. It will be at 16.3%. It will, there will be no excess. It is a balanced budget. And 16.3% of the next year's expenditures fall right in line with the 15 to 17% board policy, and allows us to have a stable fund balance, and which will be very favorable to our rating agencies when it comes time to borrow our next bond issues, which will be coming up. In fact, as a follow-up to the capital projects conversation, I'll be coming to the board on June 1st with an 8% fund bond resolution in the amount of $50 million. And this is right in line with the conversation. We want a great bond rating when it comes to our borrowings, and fund balance is one of the strongest components of making sure that that credit rating is in good status and remains at a AA1 rate. So. And then the next slide is a summary of our debt service fund. In the handouts, I provided a number of details regarding the debt service fund. Again, this is the first time in doing the budgets that we have provided such detail in the debt service category, but it was recommended by our bond counsel to provide those details and have the board certify and approve the debt service budget at the millage that we're proposing, which is no increase in millage. It is a 36.3 mil value for school debt service, which is applicable to all properties, including owner-occupied properties or primary residences. And there is, as you see, the budget here is in our handouts, and there is no there is a slight increase in fund balance, but the revenues are needed to support. This budget includes the principal and interest payments that are needed to support the 36.3 mils of debt service funds. And we maintain a fund balance at June 30th of about 21%. We do have fall payments, interest payments that bring our debt service cash balance down to a low point at December 31st. And that is, it brings it down to a point of about $9 million. So that is not, that's something, somewhere we would not want to go any lower than that, because that will cover our $5 million of interest payments. It's about a 12% fund balance in the debt service fund at that December 31 point. So it's certainly a conservative number. We don't want to keep an excess in these funds, but we also don't want to fall short in case of an emergency and need to borrow additional funds to support these funds, as we did this past year with the $80 million TAN. So certainly these are important things, and it was certainly a learning process this year as we developed these cash flows and ensured that they supported the millage and that the budgetary information matches the information we'll be giving to the county. Just want to note that this debt cash flow is an estimate. At this point, it does estimate the fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. So these numbers could change as the actual tax revenues come in. They could be modified and updated to reflect those actual numbers. And so we will be providing these after the next 8% bond issue is complete. This document will be updated and it will be sent to the county auditor's office for inclusion in their review of our debt service millage. So it is my understanding that this debt service should be approved by the board, but not by county council. But the debt service millage is included in county council's ordinance, and I will be providing these details to the council as well for information. But it's my understanding again that they do not have approval of this budget. So it will be for information. And then moving on to the comprehensive budget. So this is a new item I'm bringing for this evening. This includes all funds of the district, and so we have a comparison. We do have a significant increase this year. The comprehensive budget is going from $489 million to $615 million, I believe that number is. I didn't quite see that far.
619.
619. Okay, and the reason for the increase is we have the increase in the general fund of 20 million as proposed. Special revenue funds include all of our CARES Act, ESSER, and potential ARPA funding that will be spent through the next fiscal year. EIA funds are down a little, and our debt service fund reflects the additional interest payments due to there's not much difference on the debt service fund, excuse me. The school building fund does have a significant increase because of increased referendum spending and 8% spending. So for the most part, the others are relatively the same. So those do reflect the changes in the various funds of the district. And again, 7.6 mil increase on the general fund or operations, and no increase on debt service. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So the next section is also new to you this evening, and although we provided just a listing of the various funds, these slides will provide actually more details and in the individual funds. So if we could go to slide 18, this is the CARES Act funding of 3.6 million. And as you can see, there's a chart on the right-hand side that seems to be cut off on the PowerPoint here. Oh, we can adjust those a little bit. But they're broken down between 5 major categories. The primary area of spending, there are 2 main areas in the CARES Act, which we received early on, and we began spending on July 1. These are technology devices for K through 2 of $1 million. Our academic recovery camps were those camps in the summer, and so those are at 1.2 million. You're going to see these early on funds had a large portion of PPE or personal protective equipment and enhanced sanitation. That was in the early stages of the pandemic, 964,000. We had additional services for nursing, additional hours that were worked, of contact tracing for 280,000, and then hotspots of 176,000. Those were provided by the state, but we received funding, and then we had to make payment to the state. So it was an odd transaction, but those are reflected in that CARES Act funding. On the next slide is ESSER 1, 4.9 million. You're going to see again technology devices. The budget was $2 million. Academic recovery camps, there was additional funding there for support in our camps. Extended school year and compensatory services of 190,000. Teacher training on virtual programs and other needed professional development. PPE and sanitation. Meal distribution and after school and virtual school programs, as well as private schools and indirect costs. Private schools were eligible for ESSER 1 funds, and so we did have a number of schools that took advantage of that, and we did purchase the items and then deliver them, or they came and took possession of them from the district office. Also, indirect costs is really a transfer to the general fund. It helps support the general fund operations when there are administrative costs, costs that we are required to administer the grants. So that is what an indirect cost, definition would be. On ESSER 2 funds, we have 22.7 million. You'll see in this chart the bulk of the funding is on the budgeting is on learning loss. This is the funding source that was approved this week. So that application was made at least a month ago. And we have already begun to spend, particularly the after-school programming. The 2.0 is the spending that has already occurred, has begun to occur in this area and is directly relating to learning loss. Transfer to general fund is a large portion of this, and this is over a 3-year period. This is the indirect cost, and again, it would allow us to fund the general fund budget by the amount of about $2 million per year, and that $2 million has been included in this general fund budget you are receiving this evening as a revenue source. So we're taking advantage of the opportunity to help that, allow that to support the general fund. Mental and physical health services are prevalent in this budget, as well as PPE and sanitation. There is some technology for web storage and additional just items to support and enhance the storage capabilities. With the Zoom meetings we have, all of these recorded meetings are being stored. And so there's need for additional storage in that area and others. Facilities, there is a budget for $411,000. And the indoor air quality, $772,000, is the mold remediation at Well Branch Middle School and Elementary School reimbursement. So for a total of $22.7 million there. So those are some of the major categories. ARPA funds were just approved. Allocation was received. And when I say allocation, the dollar amount was received and an award letter was received April 30th. The deadline for the application is August 24th, and we have begun to build the application, gather information from senior staff members in other areas. And again, these funds, all of them are spend first, request reimbursement in a quarterly basis. So we are incorporating, we're already building our cash flow statement or cash flow report for potential to see if we require a TAN this year or a tax anticipation note, a short-term loan for in the fall of shorter cash flows. And we're incorporating all of these funds as spending in those cash flows to make sure that, because this is a significant increase in our funding that we must advance for the district. And finally, I bring these up because I want to bring attention to, these pay increases and many of the normal operations of the school district cannot be used with these federal COVID-related funds. The specific categories that are addressed and are allowable are listed here. And we must spend the bulk of it in learning loss, and we have every budget we have prepared so far has done that, and we will continue to do that with the next round of ARPA funding. It allows us to provide professional development. So in some cases where we have reduced general fund budgeting, for example, there was a question on the prior board meeting of what did you have to reduce in other departmental funding? And the answer to that question is professional development and travel. So we have been able to, we will be able to incorporate some of that professional development into our ESSER 3 or ARPA funds because we have those opportunities available here. We're able to purchase educational technology. We have reduced some funding in the general fund this year for licenses for software. And because we are able to address them specifically with, to address learning loss, and we may not have had those funds otherwise had we not had these additional funds. It allows us to return to face-to-face safely. Those are the intention of the funds. We can plan and implement summer learning and after-school programs, which we are continuing to work with the instructional staff to develop those plans for the summer and potentially continuing our after-school program that we're undergoing right now. Mental health services, sanitation efforts, and addressing indoor air qualities or other issues that are specifically addressed with these funds. So again, those cannot pay for compensation increases for existing staff. They cannot pay for the power bill, the energy bill, the property insurance. Those normal operations of the district, we must use these supplemental services on specific areas. So in closing, I have proposed 2 motions this evening, which incorporate language I have verified with legal counsel to make sure that the proper terminology is being used, the proper dollar amounts, and we are incorporating the millage rates into the motions this evening. So I have 2, one for debt service, one for general fund, and one for debt service. And with that, I'll be happy to take any comments or questions.
Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tanya, for your presentation. I appreciate it. I was going back through our April 23rd meeting slides and looking at what the staff recommendation was at that time. I wrote down that it was on slide 29. I apologize if that's incorrect, but at that time, the recommendation was for scenario 2, which was a 4.4 mil increase at a budget amount of 265 million. But now today, there's a proposal on slide 24 of this presentation for a 7.9% increase for a total of 274 million. So can you speak to the jump, I guess, that occurred in less than a month's time?
Yes, sure. So the initial budget that was brought forward was a very conservative budget with state mandated increases and required operational increases of energy costs, and other contractual services that have an annual CPI increase. So they were basically a step increase for teachers, the $1,000 increase, and a step increase for classified staff and administrators. Additionally, the standard, as I mentioned, the service increases that are required contractually with our service vendors like custodial, maintenance, and grounds. And so that budget with the current estimates of tax revenue at that time produced a need for 4.4 mils, which is our the portion of the millage that was allowable and known at the time, which was a look back of 2 years. So we knew at the time that prior years we had banked millage of 4.4 mils, and we had not known exactly what the new current year's millage cap would allow. So with a conservative estimate, the staff and administration brought forward a very conservative budget with really basic needs of the district. It did not address, I don't want to speak for the board, but at that time, the sense of the discussion was that it was the basic needs only, and we felt like that, or there was discussion that there was a need for more, a need to address some of the issues of the efficiency study, to provide the supports that the school needs to operate and address achievement gap and learning loss. So the request was that district staff come back with a budget that supports the maximum mill rate available to the district. And as a part of that, we focused mostly on compensation for teachers. And this budget actually provides about $7 million of increases for teacher salaries alone. So that was the bulk of the focus as we came back. And so we aligned with strategic goals. We provided the district supports that were requested to be able to make the improvements and the achievement or to move the needle on achievement, and to provide a competitive, I'm not sure if the word is innovative, but compensation package, something more than just the bare minimum for our staff. So I believe hope that I conveyed that as the board's wishes were at that time, but those were the basis of the recommendations we brought forward today.
Madam Chair, if I can, just one follow-up.
Yes.
Thank you. And another thing that I frequently get asked by people when they hear that the budget would be increasing, they want to know things about student outcomes. You know, what is the district looking like? How are we positioned? Those people that don't necessarily have kids in school, and they want to know, you know, how are our kids doing? And I think that should be inserted somehow into this presentation as we move forward, because, you know, I just pulled some SC ready and end of course data off of our report cards, and I was able to see, you know, that we are seeing gains in our student achievement. And I think that that's something that a lot of people would be interested to know as we ask for more funds, because I think that that's an important part of the conversation as well. So that's just my own suggestion. If there's a way to get that into the conversation, I think, you know, tooting our horn a little bit on that we're seeing gains and success in our students. I think that should go along with this conversation. Thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Yes, Dr. Wisniewski, I think the other thing, to your point though, that is relevant is that the pandemic is having a unprecedented impact on students and student outcomes. And so the state has already projected that 7 out of 10 students in grades 3 through 8 across the state are going to be below grade level based on projection from the state. So even though our kids haven't really taken the assessment yet, that's the projection that they're seeing and the impact across the state that they're seeing. So I think that's also speaks to your point too, that while we've made progress over time, we know this pandemic is also having an unprecedented impact, and we need to work on addressing that too. So.
Mel Kimball?
Yeah. The $50 million is that.
Can you speak closer to the microphone, please?
Right on. Okay. $50 million, you said, I think 97% is going to general fund over 3 years.
27% is the indirect cost rate, yes, sir.
Yeah. Were we restricted in terms of what could go to the general fund?
No, sir. As far as, okay, so the amount is, the maximum amount of 27% is allowable to be transferred to the general fund. Once they're in the general fund, it's at the discretion of the board to utilize those funds. Now, those 27% is a percentage of the total. Now, those spending is over multiple years, so we're breaking that up down into the years. The ARPA funds will also have the same indirect cost opportunities as the other funds have. So we may have opportunities to move a portion of those funds as well.
And you did state that the projected plan for use of those funds were approved.
The ESSER 2 fund plan just got approved this week. The ESSER 3 plan has not been finalized yet and submitted to the state. We just received the allocation April 30th.
Okay, I'm hearing that you have some kind of plan, or else you wouldn't, or you just did exactly what the template said, 27%. I think I was putting the right percentage, right?
Yes.
And 50, I think you had 50 something percent other use category, but for the loss, yeah. Earning loss, 57%. That's earning loss, 57%. So you already, I mean, there is a plan.
Yes, sir.
For that amount of $1 million in earning loss.
Yes.
I just want to understand.
Ingrid Boatright.
Thank you. Is this the presentation you'll give at the virtual budget forum?
It is slightly different. It did include ESSER funding. Well, it was kind of a combination between the last presentation you received and this one. And so I meshed the two together to provide that.
And I think this budget's great, and I think it's exactly what the board was asking for. The only part, I mentioned this last time too, and the reason I'm bringing it up again is because I feel like it's just the only hole in this budget, and that's early childhood and universal pre-K, because the board has talked about that. And there's a lot of money here, and none of it's going to that. So I don't know if there's of any value. I have no suggestion on how this might occur, but as we certify this budget, to have some sort of acknowledgement, because I know there's some political stuff coming down the pipe on the early childhood, so that's why it's not in this budget. If there's a way to sort of acknowledge that we're asking for this much money, but we still are going to be taking care of expanding early childhood in the near future. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Kathy Robach.
Yes, I just wanted to comment and kind of in response to Dr. Wisniewski, why this budget came back higher. If you remember, we gave the staff a list of things we wanted to see in the budget. One of the things that was not included in the original budget were the security officers for the elementary schools. That's almost $1 million. So I think that, it came with a kind of a bare bones type thing, and our response was, we need more, we need better for our students. We've got this loss, we can't do bare bones anymore. We need to move forward. So I think that's, from my viewpoint, why it came back higher, because we asked for things to be added.
Mr. Kyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I'm asked about its tax increase, I have a very simple response. The difference between the 4.4 mil increase and the 7.6 mil increase. When we got the 4.4 mil increase, we asked the superintendent, is that sufficient to meet the operational requirements that the board has placed on you for academic achievement? The answer was no. So come back and tell us what it will take. Well, the max he could ask for was 7.6, and he asked for 7.6. If you look at our millage rate and you look at the slope of increases, we had a year of flat. Dr. Rodriguez, when we hired him primarily because of his success in taking and improving achievement gaps in highly diverse schools. He spent a year evaluating our district, and then COVID hit. And then the amount of millage was flat because we had a continuing resolution. He was not able to address what we said was important. Didn't have the resources. Now he's got, it's like he's had a year more to sit and be frustrated about trying to take care of what we have told him to do. Well, now it's time to give him the tools, and we will hold him accountable, and he's accepted that. So that's what I tell these voters, and that's what I tell county council. We cannot do what we've always done because we will always get what we've always gotten, and that's an achievement gap. And so it's time to put us on a slope to achieve success, and success is no racial achievement gap, period. And it's time to start this fiscal year. So that's the difference between 4.4 and 7.6.
Mr. Smith? Mr. William Smith? You're muted.
My question was, which budget has the community seen the 274 million or conversations one that the board has, the board was presented in April?
The 274 million.
Come again, Ms. Crosby, I didn't hear you.
It was the $274 million budget. That was the same presentation or same information that was provided on our meeting last Tuesday, the 11th. Some additional information was incorporated, which included these CARES and ESSER Act fund slides as well. The same information, the same dollars of 274 million was provided in the virtual budget program presentation. And I think we did a public press release, excuse me, and sent that out to all employees. You may have that in your inbox as well. So there's a link, a YouTube link that allow you to view that. So I'll follow up to make sure that board members actually receive that as well on, I believe, yesterday. And so we will, that has the information in this budget presentation.
And at that time, was the community able to give input in at that time?
We have received, the YouTube video was posted out on the web on Friday.
Right, no, Ms. Crosby, I'm asking not in reference to the YouTube video on Friday, but prior to that, was the community able to give input on the budget?
Through public comment, the opportunities were available, but we did not do a forum prior to that date.
Okay, guys. Okay. Thank you. You answered my question. I was just going to say, I cannot support in certifying this budget without community input. My vote should not reflect on the work by the district staff. The budget book is an excellent product, but our community deserves an opportunity for input. For that reason, I will have to be voting no on this tonight. Thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez?
I was just going to add that through that YouTube video forum, they are providing input currently, and that continues to remain open, and we will continue to address community questions or input through that as we continue to move forward.
If I may add one last thing, we do have 3 readings with county council. The second and third reading do have required public hearings as well, so there will be opportunity for the community to join into county council meetings for public input as well.
Right, but you're asking the board to certify the budget tonight. That will be our stance tonight. And as elected officials, we are elected by the community, and so without community input, and once again, I will say that's why I made the statement I just made. Is why I can't support it, because the community did not have prior engagements and conversations with this budget. So I understand y'all put something out Friday, but we're voting on it today, and we didn't publicly discuss it with the community. Thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez?
I would just add that to my understanding, Ms. Crosby, correct me if I'm wrong, right, that since Friday, we have already received more input and it's been viewed by more people than any other public forum that we would have had prior to COVID on the budget. Because I think you said we had 90 already, and I think you said when you had budget forums in the past prior to COVID, you didn't get that kind of turnout.
Public budget forums are typically not well received. 90 views was very favorable compared to most years we've done the budget presentation.
Ms. Boatright?
I don't think Mr. Campbell's spoken yet. Did you?
Yes. Earl, go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
I just want to say that when we had it public, most people, the largest crowd we ever had, I think, was 9 folks showed up. So the public, if you look at how many, you say 90? 90?
Yes, sir.
That's a whole lot better than 9.
I would concur with Earl, having gone to several of those over the years. They were never well received. And I went to ones on north of the Broad and also south of the Broad. So how many, you did say 90 views, and then I'm curious, like approximately how many questions or comments have you received electronically through that link?
About 5. So there haven't been many yet, but I expect that we will continue to receive those and be able to respond to them.
May I go ahead, ma'am? Yes, you may. It's not right.
I didn't like, no, I actually kind of wanted to respond to Will's point about public comment because he said something that intrigued me, which is, we are representatives of the public, right? So my District 11, I talked to people in my district about this budget. I've discussed what they think about raising the budget. I've been discussing, let me tell you, the South End of Hilton Head Island likes to discuss the budget. I've had a lot of conversations. I go out, I ask people and just in general what they think of the schools, what they think of the board. And so I kind of feel like that's what we're supposed to do is represent our public, and we should be having some of these conversations. And then we are elected by our constituents to come here and represent them. So I don't know if we need a whole separate product. I think they trust us to certify this budget if it's good enough for us, and we've gone out and we've engaged our own constituents. I don't see why that's a problem at this point, especially because there are more opportunities for public comment. But I am sure, Mr. Smith, that your community trusts you to make a decision on this.
Well, Ms. Boatwright, it's not just about trust. It's not just about trust. It's also that it's about past, present practice that we've given the community the time to process the budget, and they have time to process it and given me a call in the past. And this time, I don't feel that we've done that. So, in the course of being transparent, when you change a system that people are used to, then there are steps that you take. Some people don't like change. Some people don't understand change. And sometimes change must happen, and especially due to the pandemic. And I think that I want to make sure that I'm careful that I give my constituents a chance to look at the budget. And I'm sure they do trust me. I want to give them a chance to look at the budget before me certifying and voting the budget and having time to call me on it. Because there's a lot of things going on in life right now. So they're just past practices. We've done it a little differently. And I figured that the transparency was a little more different. Thank you.
So would our Chair of Finance like to make a motion, or another board member? Mr. Dyer?
Madam Chair, I move that the Beaufort County Board of Education approve and certify the fiscal year 2021-2022 general fund budget in the amount of $274,600 with an operational millage rate of 121.6.
Second.
And that was Mr. Stringer. Who was the second? No, I'm sorry, Earl Campbell. All right, any discussion? Mr. Mel Campbell? Your hand is up. Yes.
Thank you. We've vetted this long enough.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the comments of my fellow board members, and I certainly respect everyone's opinion. I'll be voting down on this today. I was more in line with scenario 2 that was presented to us about a month ago. This is going full bore, and I certainly agree that there are areas such as the security officers that were already identified by the community, the public, parents, and the board as a priority. I recognize our teachers also are due appropriate compensation. But at this point in time, with a potential referendum still and millions of dollars and facilities needs that are to occur, and also the things that are going on in our county and our community outside of the school district that have to do with an increase in taxes coming down from county council. and referendums that they're going to be potentially floating. I can't support it at this rate of an increase, so I'll be voting down. Thank you.
All right, there are no further hands up. The question is called.
Yes.
Yes, Rob.
The motion carries 8-3 with 0 abstentions. The 3 noes are Mr. Stribinger, Dr. Wisniewski, and Mr. William Smith. Mr. Guyer.
Madam Chair, I move that the Beaufort County Board of Education approve and certify the fiscal year 2021-2022 debt service fund budget in the amount of $75,304,947 with a debt millage rate of 36.3.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Earl Campbell. Any discussion? There, Mr. Smith?
This is something else I would definitely like to have discussed with the public prior to doing this. So for that, once again, I understand. I know they trust me, but we, like Dr. Wisniewski just said, we have a lot of different things that are going on, and county council is going to bring some different things in. So I think that we want to be careful how we do this. So I can't support this tonight. In the future, maybe, but at this juncture, I just don't see that happening. Thank you. And I thank you all. I do thank you all for your hard work.
Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tanya, can you explain the process of approving and certifying the debt service fund budget? Because it's my understanding that this is something that was kind of recently approached or changed. I recall that there was some conversation about it, and I'd like to talk about this a little bit more in depth, perhaps.
Sure. Last year, when the board approached, we discussed the funding for the referendum. There was a need for additional millage to support the increase in, or the repayment of principal and interest payments on the $75 million, original $75 million of bonds, and the second and third bond issues that would be required to fund the $345 million bond referendum program. So as a result of increased borrowings, we had increased principal and interest payments as well. So there was discussion with the county auditor last year, and then eventually a forensic audit, which recommended that the board be informed of the debt service revenues and expenditures on an annual basis. And actually, there is an administrative rule that it dictates this area and does state that the board would approve and certify both a general fund and a debt service budget. So it was recommended by attorneys at that time that we would move forward in the future with both approving a general fund budget and a debt service fund budget, so that it demonstrates that the board has been informed of what revenues would be required to produce through the tax millage for debt service, and the specific expenditures that would be expected to be spent with the repayment of bonds. And so as a result of that, I'm bringing forward the full debt service information, all of the details of that, including the cash flows to justify the millage rate. that would be provided ultimately to the county auditor's office once those final numbers are in, final tax collections are in. So it all came from recommendations that as a result of the additional audit from last year.
Thank you. I really appreciate you going through all that because that AR part was the one that was new to me. And I think that that's important for, the public to know in case they see this and are wondering that looks new. And also the debt millage rate is set by.
There is a recommendation from the financing team. It comes from our financial advisor, and that is the recommendation. The financial advisor recommended 36.6 mils last year, and that amount was lowered to 36.3 by the county auditor, who imposed a lower millage than was what was provided in the county ordinance and approved by county council. So it's actually sitting at 36.3 mils, and we are recommending no change this year.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right, the question is called.
Yes.
The motion carries 10-1. The one no is Mr. Smith. We are now down to the third item under board business action. And thank you, Ms. Crosby. Dr. Stratus, a state waiver for virtual programming.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So good evening, board members and Madam Chair. Tonight I want to bring forward the first segment of a two-part proposal for Beaufort County School District virtual program. This presentation will highlight points addressing requirements of Beaufort County School District to apply to the State Department of Education for a virtual waiver, and will also address the next steps. I want us to recall that in November 2019, Beaufort County School District obtained a state approval for SC virtual franchise. However, with the onset of COVID-19, we engaged in a district-wide virtual model to address student learning. This impact made by COVID resulted with a nationally high number of students enrolled into virtual instruction, and many state governments realizing a potential shift in district costs. The state of South Carolina was no different at this realization, and this year developed a legislation proposal of per-student funding cuts to districts who were either planning or continuing with virtual programs for the 2021-2022 academic school year. However, late in April, South Carolina landed on the decision of providing school districts a no per student penalty if their virtual enrollment did not exceed beyond 5% of the total district student enrollment. It was with this notification that we are now engaging at growing BCSD's virtual program. To start the process, we are required to submit state waivers. So I will go through a few of the state waivers first and then a few of the slides, because when we get to the opportunity of coming back to you as board members, then I will continue with a few of the slides in this presentation. I'd like to go through some of the waivers that are going to be touched. It'll be 43-231, which is about instruction in the subject areas, 43-231, 43-232, 232A, and 234. So I'm going to ask, if possible, if you can go back to the presentation. I appreciate Ms. Robin, thank you. So we could just start right here with the presentation. This information represents the Beaufort County School District's intention to provide a system of personalized learning experiences, flexible learning environments, and proficiency-based learning opportunities for our students. If you can proceed to the next slide, please. This here just speaks briefly regarding some of the innovations that South Carolina has recognized with shifting their idea of putting a penalty and allowing school districts the opportunity to go forward with a virtual model without shifting our per student costs. With this, we want to recognize it as a changing mindset, local policy and practices, and above all right now, the state policy and regulations. We're very familiar with the virtual rationale of practice. This next slide gives us information on slide 4. Meeting the needs of diverse learners, providing choice of students and families as to how they want to learn, provision for competitive edge in the charter and homeschool marketplace, and the potential of meeting changes in the educational landscape subject to external influences and changes. I'd like to skip slide 5, 6, and 7, and 8 if we can go to slide 9, to the legislation request. So the legislation ruling identified in the waivers are 43-231, which is instruction in the subject areas shall be scheduled for each student for a minimum of 1,800 minutes or 30 hours per week, including lunch or equivalent time on a yearly basis. The next legislation identifies the school day must be at least 6 hours, including lunch. Legislation 43-232, instruction in the subject areas shall be scheduled for each student at a minimum of 1,800 minutes or 30 hours per week, including lunch. And that's for the secondary area. So it's elementary, and we recognize secondary. 43-232, the school day must be at least 6 hours, including lunch. 43-234, a school may award 1 unit credit of an academic standard-based course that requires a minimum of 120 hours. This refers to what we know as seat time. The last legislation in this waiver is 43-234. The instructional day for secondary students must be, again, at least 6 hours days, including lunch, and that again is the secondary student. These waivers are necessary as we recognize that we go with a virtual program. Our students would be more in a performance-based model, not seated in front of the computers for a total of 6.5 hours a day. And these are the key ones that are tied to a shifting what we know from a traditional classroom into a virtual platform that we've all experienced this past year. So I'd like us to keep in mind, we are looking for partnering for services in grades K through 8. As the program implementation demonstrates and grows, we will look into having other opportunities growing for our students. But I think one of the most important things to recognize is the lifting of that potential penalty to schools or school districts of that 5% of a threshold, allowing us to have a 5% school enrollment without being penalized on our cost per student or what we receive from the state is a significant opportunity for us. So at this time, we go to the last slide, please. On this process, we're basically at step number 1, a waiver approval. We are looking for a waiver approval for these legislation points that I shared with you. As we go forward, we will look into joining a consortium where we would sign an agreement, bring forward the course and information tied to the course as well as the deliverables. But in order to go forward, I felt it is most important to start with the waiver, deliver that, have that go to the state. I've been in close communication with the state. They're the ones who identify the areas to address. and they're just waiting for our opportunity to submit the application. So at this time, I am open for questions.
Mr. Mel Campbell?
How does this relate to the state's virtual program?
So one of the opportunities going in this direction, it allows us to work with a consortium of other school districts and working with a third party who is actually working at the hiring. So we're not going to have an impact directly on our classrooms. Our classrooms teachers can focus face to face, and we're able to work with a group of other districts at the building of that, I want to say, pool of employment, and it doesn't put as much pressure back onto us as a system.
So, my question about the state's virtual program, but if I hear you correctly, you're suggesting that we could partner with other forms of virtual programming and ease our personal programming.
Yes, sir. So we will be able to still have our students who do enroll into SC Virtual, not within our franchise. That opportunity will still exist for us. And we have kept that door of communication open with SC Virtual. I am recommending that we maintain our SC Virtual status, our franchise status as well. Because as we look future into growth, that franchise is, they are limited at the state being released. Beaufort County was able to receive one.
5%. My question is basically 5% of our students are going to South Carolina virtual platform, and we got 0% outside of that, right?
I'm not expecting 5% of our students to enroll with SC Virtual directly. It's not the trend that we're seeing with numbers, nor how we're working at the high school level. SC Virtual does work, as you know, 9 through 12. Okay, thank you, sir.
Ms. Robine?
Thank you. My question was around that 5% as well. And this is probably way too early to ask this question, but just, how would we, if we have 6%, 7% of our students who want to do it, how do we determine which 5%? Do we cap it at 5%?
Well, there's 2 points that you bring forward, Mrs. Robine. One, if we recognize the amount of students already involved in virtual who are meeting the criteria established within the consortium, we're actually where we need that 5% threshold. So we have looked at those numbers to give us a safety net, although we're not looking by any means to start at that large. We want to be safe in looking at a certain grade band. And then as we go forward, if we're meeting success, let's keep adding and adding. But right now, as we look at the criteria, we are in a safety net within that 5%.
Ms. Ingrid Boatright.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions. One goes to equity. So I was at Whale Branch High School, and access came up quite a bit. And I looked, actually pulled it up again. The Whale Branch area has almost no broadband access. So how are we going to make sure that every child in the district who would like to participate has the opportunity if they don't have broadband access?
Mary, I'll take that. So currently, Whale Branch is one of the areas of our district that is actually more heavily involved in virtual programming than they are in face-to-face programming currently, right now. We also have MiFi devices that we have available that we can hand out to students and make sure that works through cell phone towers and cell service. So if there isn't broadband out there, they can connect through MiFi devices.
Can I follow up with that?
Go ahead.
So, the cell towers, that's a Band-Aid solution. I mean, these families need broadband access. And I don't know what's going to be proposed, but I was looking, we spend, $150,000 a month with Hargray? Can we not sort of get with them and say, we need to make sure that, because to me, what this pandemic has done has said, broadband's a necessity. It is an essential service. And if we have to get it to all the kids in Beaufort County, and some of them And I know that Willow Branch has, I don't know how successful it's been, because we did hear from students who spent a lot of time fighting with their devices. So that would be one issue. I think there's an equity issue, and I think we should get with Hargrave and with the amount of money we give them, say, what can we do to fix like an actual wired connection to, you know, the home or to a community center or something. And then the second question is, how do we make sure that people aren't doing virtual for the wrong reasons? Because their parents want them to babysit their kids or work, or otherwise feel that education is not that important. So look, you're in high school, fulfill your minimum requirements. And then the kids aren't getting the same education that they would if they were in seats.
So you're leading into my part 2 of this, of the waiver comes forward. And a few of the slides in the PowerPoint do address the eligibility. One of that is school recommendation by the school counselor and the principal, which is significant. I have to share that, as well as meeting a GPA requirement that we are able to calculate even at the elementary. So what we've looked at, the students who have been involved in virtual, we've actually already established a table that we did convergence on GPA for the elementary and obviously for the middle school and high school, but that we've already set. But the most important part is the recommendation from the school site, the school counselor, that principal. These are the people who have been working even closer than us, well, when we moved from that, and they really have a closer call on the attendance and the involvement with our children.
That's great news, because I was worried. So there's going to be a minimum GPA that you have to have before, okay, that's
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mel Campbell? Oh, no, excuse me, Ms. Fidget just first.
Mine is very brief. I look forward to hearing more about the consortium and where we're going with that. But my comment is, this is probably the #1 topic I'm hearing in my community is, what have we learned from this pandemic? And how are we going to take what might be working for some of our families and make it more the norm? So that's why I find this very exciting and look forward to more.
Appreciate it, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, now, Mr. Mel Campbell.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One is, how does this integrate with what our instructional plan is going to be virtually in terms of the academics? I mean, teachers, now that they know more, will probably want to use more. And how does our plan, which you already put a big red flag in my mind when you said GPA, because that alone kind of creates a segregation or in terms of student needs and students' ability and family needs, etc. You know, the disabilities, they'll be the first to school because, you know, anyway, I don't let the state worry about that. But how does that 5% student that's going virtually, a certain GPA, impact our mode of operating with the rest of our students who would want to be involved with some form of virtual education? Is that something that we've thought about in terms of a phase-in? We're not going to just drop all those computers and all the broadband, all the things that we've learned, all the lessons that we archived, because the students who are really good at it are gone at the 5% and nobody else is doing.
So
the next pandemic catches us flat-footed again.
I don't want to peel the onion all the way through.
Okay.
Mr. Campbell, I
understand. That's just a thought.
I feel it strongly, yes, sir.
Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Stratos, for your presentation. I'm excited about this because I did see it kind of as a pain point as we move forward with the virtual program in K-8, and how do we sustain that for the students and families that need it. I just have 2 comments briefly, and you don't have to answer them, but just something to get the ball rolling. I do also kind of have an issue with the GPA requirement, and that's simply because I know that for some students, you know, bullying is an issue, or, you know, they don't learn well in the classroom environment, and virtual has been really great for them. So I just would caution us in having that as being a set requirement and not having any type of waiver, if you will, or a guidance counselor or someone that can make a recommendation that regardless of GPA, those students are able to be served in a virtual environment. And then the other thing is in regard to sports. Some of these kids may be interested in participating in sports as well at their home schools. So I just want to make sure that they're not, excluded from doing that. But those are just my two comments as this moves forward. I think it's a great initiative and I'm excited to see how it, pans out.
May I?
Yes.
So there is the criteria, as we want to speak about the eligibility for a moment. We utilize the language mitigating circumstances or discretionary practice. That is one of the points that schools will have that opportunity. We look to have the opportunity to expand this with regard to our homebound, expand this with regard to our students who declare to be homeschooled through Beaufort County School District, where they would fall under those guidances. You just drove that conversation up, Rusnevsky said I could be full-time virtual and still have that opportunity, right, to engage at the sports with my home school. So those options will exist with this model.
All right, Mr. William Smith.
Thanks for doing the presentation. This is a lot of good information. But one of the things that I do question is, she hit on, alluded to one of them, was about the GPAs. That is kind of a concern of mine, because you could have a student of a learning disability or something, and then what would be I know the question online would be, would they still, how would you put them into the fold? Even though I know that IEP has certain rules that would basically put them above whatever the program statuses is, but more solely also, I do have other concerns that this is not being a program that where we will put misbehaved kids and kids that we don't want into these districts, into these virtual classes as well, because then I believe that we could be able to be starting to losing students. Setting students up for failure. So I mean, that's just, I know at any turn we definitely as a district don't want to do that, but sometimes if this is not managed and watched with a microscope, that can easily happen. So that is one of my concerns as well. And also my last question is this: how does this ties into the achievement gap as well?
So I will start, first of all, I want to make a commentary. Number one, the questions being postured with regard to being so student-centric, to you board members, is probably one of the most commendable items, and I have to share that, and thank you for that. Second, the utilization of the GPA is the goal to have our children hopefully be successful, because we've gone through 16, 17 months of learning loss, and we want to recognize that we have students who will excel, we have students who have not excelled in virtual, but number one, amongst I think everyone in here who is student-centric, is that opportunity for our children to cross the stage and graduate and go beyond. So we have to be careful and monitor. They're 100% on point. This is not to be a program that we take our children who may be identified as disciplinary and put them into virtual to get them off campus. That is one of the eligibility criteria as well. Low level, what I call parking tickets or items, the kind of misbehaving. In class, children do that. But when we look at level 2 and level 3, this is not an opportunity to put children unless it's an opportunity to provide services. And the commentary for our students with an IEP, the consortium, and I didn't want to get into that much of detail, but the consortium does have a committee with regard to meeting the needs of our students with IEPs. Our students will still be serviced from our home school through our resource teachers. So these options will exist. It is inclusionary model. And again, it goes to that recommendation. And if a kid may be better served on virtual, an IEP team can always make that recommendation. That is never removed, sir.
Mr. Earl Campbell?
What I'm about to say may tick somebody's off, even some parents. But our children need to be in the classroom, face to face with teachers. We're talking about closing the achievement gap. And those students that have been virtual this past year, a lot of them have failed. So I would suggest that all of our students be face to face in the classroom.
Ms. Romine?
Madam Chair, I was just ready to make a motion. I do see this as the first step in, creating a program that will work for some of our students to continue their education. I move that the Beaufort County School District Board of Education directs the Superintendent, Dr. Frank Rodriguez, to submit a waiver request to the South Carolina Department of Education in support of Beaufort County implementation of a virtual program.
Second by Ms. Spidrich. So Mr. Smith and Ms. Romine, can you put your hands down and then put them back up if you want to comment?
Can't get it down, but it's down.
Okay. All right, Mr. Smith?
My question is, maybe she have answered it already, but I don't think I've heard it. How will this be in line with the achievement gap, and how will this help students with our goals of closing the achievement gap?
So, Mr. Smith, with regard, and I do recognize, thank you for bringing that question back up. I think by being able to be definitive regarding eligibility criteria and having students who meet the eligibility criteria with the concessions of schools being able to go through committee, right, myself for an IEP, I think by having some gateway information, points in the front end, and recognizing that we need the best place for a lot of our students who are not meeting proficiency is to be in the face and the hands of our educators who are highly skilled. So yes, we recognize we may have students who do not have the GPA who may be making it to the program. That is, there are reasons that will exist. I'm sure we could fill that in. But the best place right now for majority of our children meeting the identified that we know objection of 7 out of 10 children will not meet proficiency. I'd like to have those 7 kids in school with an educator and having the opportunity of face-to-face, sir.
Ms. Boatwright?
Question. I call the question. I'd like to. Okay. Then to call the question and end debate, we need a 2/3 vote. So you see unanimous consent, right?
Yeah, we can do unanimous consent. Is there anybody who objects to calling the question? Okay, then the question.
Yeah, calling the question as in terms of go ahead and call for the vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to make one comment.
And then actually, I do, because I mean, she called. I was called. The person, Ms. Bower, was called on. I was not done. Am I questioning? But so yes, I do.
Okay, so let's have a vote to end debate. That's the motion. So we need a second.
Second.
Okay. So Ms. Boatwright made the motion to call the question, end debate. Mr. Guyer seconded, so now we take that vote. That takes precedent over the motion on the table.
Do you want to, what's your vote?
Yes.
I was waiting for yes.
The motion, let's see.
It's 8:30.
Yes, that's the majority.
Yeah, well, it needs to be 2/3, and that's definitely 8 over 11, right? So, let me just, I think that's passes then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's 72%. Okay, so yes, we amended debate, 8-3, the 3 no's are Stripinger, Dr. Wisniewski, and Mr. Smith. So now we'll go to the motion on the table, which was the one that Ms. Robine made. All right, so voting is now open for this.
Mr. Earl Campbell? Earl?
I'm gonna vote no. The reason I am is because 5%, who's gonna make that decision? And see, I can.
All right, we're not supposed to have any. Thank you. So the motion is approved, and it's 9 yeses and 2 noes. The 2 noes are Earl Campbell and William Smith. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Stratus.
Thank you.
All right, it's a little past 9 and we don't have any second public comments. We have a few more items on our agenda. So we need a motion to continue the meeting, or we'll be adjourning at 9:15.
I move that we.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I move that we continue the meeting to finish what is on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Robine, second. Any discussion? Yeah. Hold on a second, I need to get back in there.
I'm taking my hand down just as an FYI.
Okay, Mr. Smith? Your comments regarding continuing the meeting? That's the motion on the table? Okay, thank you. All right, voting is now open.
Yes.
Yes.
The motion carries 10-1. The 1 no is Mr. Smith. All right, the next agenda item is we need a motion to approve rescheduling our business meeting of June 15, 2021 to June 29, because we've already voted on and approved the change in graduation dates with accompanying rain makeup dates. And those, we normally have our business meetings on Tuesday nights, and those conflict with June 15th and June 22nd. So that is why the proposed date is Tuesday, June 29th. Would somebody like to make that motion?
Sure.
Is it 29th or 26th?
26, right?
No.
Well,
That's not Tuesday?
Tuesday's the 29th.
Tuesday's
Tuesday is 29th, but when I was looking at it here, it says 26th.
It should be the,
But I can make a motion that says the 29th. I
it
think
should be the
that'll,
29th.
Oh, yeah, because the agenda says 29.
I'll make it correctly here.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, let's see if I can pull this off. I move that the Beaufort County Board of Education reschedule its regular business meeting on June 15, 2021 to Tuesday, June 26, 29th, I almost messed it up, 2021 due to graduations and rain makeup dates.
Who was the second?
Oh, Earl.
Earl, okay.
Reschedule.
Mr. Campbell, second.
To reschedule, I'm just reading this, the regular business meeting of Tuesday, June 15, 2021 to Tuesday, June 29, 2021. Due to graduations and rain makeup dates.
So can you, post that?
Give me a
Yeah,
second.
you're working on it. Okay. There being no hands up. As soon as you get it posted, we can vote. Mr. Smith?
Yes, my question is, so what if it don't rain and we can use that date? Then we couldn't put any contingencies of that. If we don't need a date, then we can go ahead and have the meeting?
Well, the problem with that is that we'd have to vote again, and I think it's likely better to give, a more advanced warning to, a change in date. Personally, it's my wedding anniversary, June 29th. Yeah, June 22nd would be much better, but I don't think that's good for the public.
But that's why I said that we can put a contingent that if the date is good, then we can use it, and if the date is not good, then we will use the 29th.
That's not the motion on the table.
Well, Madam Chair, at this time I would like to amend the motion. I'd like to amend the motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to amend the motion that if the 15th is fine, then we will still meet on the 15th. If it rains, if there's complications on the 15th, then we will use the 29th.
The 15th is taken up by high school graduation.
I thought this was a rain makeup, a rain day.
The 22nd is a rain day.
Okay, well, on the agenda, what I'm reading in front of my screen, it has the 15th.
Can I respond to this motion?
Yes.
Well, I guess to discuss Mr. This amendment, it needs a second, or there's no discussion about it.
I'll second.
Okay, now, this, right, you want to respond?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying, Mr. Smith, I think it's May River High School is scheduled for the 15th. And then the reason we didn't postpone it just a week back to the 22nd is because there's a possibility of using it as a rain day. So to be 100% safe that, we weren't going to be affected by graduation, we just moved it to the 29th. We're going to have to move it off the 15th because we can't hold a board meeting at the same time of a scheduled graduation. But that's why they picked the 29th over the 22nd.
Okay, right, and so my question was, if it didn't rain, could the 22nd would be fine? Will be a fine date if it didn't rain. That's what I was saying. So I was saying, could we not just go ahead and use the 22nd and have the 29th as the alternate date if it did rain? So that way the public would be informed that if it doesn't rain, then we will use June 22nd as the official date. But if it rained, then we will use June 29th as the actual date.
If that's the amendment, then would be.
That's all I was asking.
So the amendment we need to vote on is that we're going to change the business meeting of June 15th to the 22nd, if it doesn't rain.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, Dr. R.
June 29 is, county council, third reading. It's a Tuesday. It's county council's third reading on the budget.
Right, isn't that right?
See, I can't make motions because I'm just jinxed and cursed. I thought this would be a simple one. I didn't know.
They're meeting on Tuesday instead of Monday?
So what time is it?
We're verifying. We want to make sure.
Can I move that in the, while they're sorting that out, that we post a table it on the table temporarily and go on to the next thing and then come back to it? Sure. Get our dates all in a row, so that next time I make a motion, maybe I'll make the right ones.
Well, okay, but the table.
I'm sorry.
Monday the 28th is county council.
County council is Monday the 28th. You made the right motion.
I withdraw.
Okay, yeah. All right, so we're voting on what's on the screen there. So we're changing, the amendment was to change the meeting date from the 15th to the 22nd. If it doesn't. So is voting open?
No.
Something else should look at, hold up, change it up, see what it says. Hold on just a second, Robin.
So, the motion,
Oh, I'm going to there.
okay, the amended motion, fails, 4-7. The 4 yeses, can you scroll or Mr. excuse me. Well, I should say the 7 noes, because that's the prevailing side.
The 7
The noes are Earl Campbell, Christina Guadz, David Stribinger, Tricia Fidrich, keep scrolling.
Richard Geyer,
Angela
Angela Middleton,
Middleton,
and Ingrid Boatman.
Ingrid
Oh,
Boatman.
right.
Okay, so now we'll go to Ingrid's, motion.
Ill-fated motion.
Why is that not right?
Isn't it supposed to be the 29th?
No.
No, it's the 29th.
Yeah, but that's in the, like, the heading, right?
No, we're still on the 26th, not the 29th.
So.
No, it's really the 29th.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
It is
the 29th.
I moved to reschedule.
Can you change that heading?
I can't change the heading.
Okay, so just, do you have it in the body of the?
Yes, I'm trying to get back to,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back to that motion now.
Nobody let me make any motions.
All right, so we have the motion, to reschedule the Board of Education business meeting from June 15th to June 29th. Voting is open.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, how are you voting?
The motion, is approved, 10-1, the 1 no is?
Mr. Smith.
Mr. William Smith. All right, next on the agenda. So actually, before we go on, Robin, next steps, can you please provide the board members with an updated, corrected calendar for 2021 with this new date on it, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Mr. Richard Geyer to give an update on the board culture workshop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've looked at the dates in August, and the date for the facilitators that they're available is the 21st of August, and we have a number of members that cannot make that date. So I would recommend to the board that we postpone this meeting until we have a consensus from everyone to attend, or say a commitment for everyone to attend later on in the year. And I'd ask that Ms. Cushenberry poll each member, and each member provide a Saturday after the 21st of August, obviously, that they will be available, and they will make a commitment that barring an unforeseen, that they will attend this conference.
So can I ask you a question? So, and on a Saturday, is it an all-day affair?
It's an all-day affair.
Okay, thank you. Any, all right, okay.
No objection, so we can go right ahead and have Ms. Cushenberry hold the board member.
So by unanimous consent, Ms. Cushenberry will hold the members for a new date. All right. Next on the agenda is technology devices for board members. Mr. William Smith.
At this time, Madam Chair, I'd like to take this off and move this to the next meeting.
So you don't want to discuss it tonight?
No, ma'am, I don't.
So since it's on the agenda, it was approved on the agenda, I think now we need a two-thirds vote to remove it.
Or we could just postpone it.
Or postpone it.
Maybe make a move to postpone it to the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we postpone it to the next meeting.
Okay, so we need a second, and that's just a majority vote. Okay, Ms. Fidrich, second the motion to postpone it to the next business meeting. Any discussion? Voting is open.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. All right, we now need a motion to approve the consent agenda minutes. Consent agenda. Ms. Fidrich?
Move that we approve the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, second by Ms. Boatright. And voting is open. Actually, before we open voting, I just want to thank Robin Cushingberry and Kathy Robine for reviewing the minutes of April 20 and watching the video and getting all those crazy motions correct. Thank you. Voting is now open.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, how are you voting?
Who's Todd? Who's Todd?
The consent agenda is approved 10-0 with Mr. Smith's vote not cast. We're now on to future agenda topics. Please raise your hand if you want to offer a topic. There being none, we'll go on to announcements. The reminder to take the board survey. Mr. Mel Campbell, is there going to be emailed to us or?
Yes.
Yeah, I expect probably that survey in another 24 hours. Please.
We're working on
Make sure you take the survey. We'll call it the monkey survey, but.
Does that come to us in email? I haven't seen
It will come in email.
It will, okay.
All right.
Within the next 24 hours.
Yeah, how is it me? Because it was all, I never.
All right, next on the agenda, we already commented, there are no second public comments. So now we need to continue executive session, and we don't need another motion to go in there because we already gave the motion earlier. So Molly and Robin, I will ask that you have us go into executive session again and tell us when we're there. back in public session from executive session at the May 18, 2020 Beaufort County Board of Education business meeting. Do we have any action as necessary or appropriate coming out of executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair. We have one recommendation. I move that the Board of Education approve amendment number 19, Thompson Turner Construction for Hvac work at Beaufort High School in the amount of $1,245,048.
I second.
Ms. Boatright?
Oh, sorry, my hand's up. Shoot, go. Take it down.
There being no hands up, the question is called.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, I don't see you.
The motion is approved, 801, and 2 votes not cast. The 1 abstention is Dr. Wisniewski. The 2 votes not cast are David Stribinger and
William Smith.
William Smith. All right. Since we've finished all the items on the agenda, we'll adjourn by unanimous consent unless there are objections. We're adjourned.